Aloha, friends and family. Welcome back this week. I'm so excited to share Keri Nola with you this week. And I want to start out by just sharing, because I love to do this, like how we crossed paths in our life together. So you may remember Lloyd Burnett was on my show. We talked about using fear as a catalyst for change. And Lloyd happens to be best friends with this beautiful Keri Nola. And my best friend and business partner, Heather Alice Shea, was telling me, you've got to meet this girl, Keri. And I'm like, you got to meet this guy, Lloyd. And then all of a sudden we found out, oh my gosh, they work together. And so Heather and I decided to attend the Healer Code live event in San Diego in January, where we both got to meet Keri and Lloyd in person. It was such a wonderful experience. And I'm really excited to share with you today this beautiful, loving, nurturing, intelligent woman who is known by many of her friends and her community as the queen of getting shit done. And the other one is the shadow goddess, or that's what I'm calling it. What is it that they like to call you, Keri?
The shadow mama.
The shadow. Oh, I like shadow goddess.
Please, yes, let's upgrade it.
The shadow mama. And from what I learned, in my own personal experience at the Healers Code Live event, which I absolutely loved, one of the things that we talked about that really resonated with me was shadow work around our relationship with abundance. And so this is the very topic that I would love for you to share with my listeners today. So thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome, Jen. Thank you for the sweet invitation. I'm so excited that our paths have crossed in this precious way, that we've gotten to meet in real life. So many of our connections nowadays are virtual, which is wonderful, but to have been able to squeeze you and to spend that weekend together, it was such a gift to have your energy in the room at Healers Code Live and to feel the synergy really between our vibrations and our messages, and just, I think, the expansive nature with which we tap in to see humanity with and from. And I think now more than ever, the conversation of abundance is so important and so necessary. And abundance for me is so much broader than finances and money. And I feel like we share that belief that abundance for me is really our relationship with enoughness, our relationship to allowing ourselves to attract and have that which we desire, our realization that we are really co-creating with everything that is, was, and ever will be. And to me, it's really deeply linked with our power, our relationship to our ultimately infinite creative capacity to impact what we're experiencing in our reality, to make the most of what is in our reality, and to really differentiate between the programming that's very prevalent in our world and in our consciousness, and to develop practices that allow us to remember that there is enough. That we are enough, that the resources are enough and plentiful. And I think it's always a dance to navigate that.
Oh, I love that. It's always a dance to navigate that. And yes, we do share very similar feelings on what abundance is, which is how I so quickly resonated with you. My word for 2019 was actually abundance. And, it shows up in our health, in love, in money. And it's, for me, what I noticed is it's this sensation of just like fulfillment. Yes. It's like feeling full, abundantly full. And whatever that looks like is different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're in a time where this is being recorded in April 2020. And there's an energy right now that I think is being magnified that was really already existing under the surface, where, in my words, I noticed there's like a deep core wound around abundance. And I'm not just talking about making money, but I'm talking about the knowing our self-worth to receive. I think receiving is a huge part of it. And I always think of everything as like the chakras. I think of the sacral chakra, right? Like opening up to receive the plentiful, fruitful, abundant flow of life that we were born into.
Yes.
And where we are right now, if you're paying attention to social media or even the media, you'll notice that the language that people use either is coming from a place of, we can say fear or love, but it's also very closely related to abundance and scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
And so in one of my meditations, it was actually about a month ago, what came through so clearly was that we are in a time of realizing that abundance is in the heart and scarcity is in the mind, because the scarcity is the idea or belief that we are not abundant, which we naturally already are, right? So it's actually just the belief that we created that we aren't. So I want to invite you to share a little bit deeper about how you came to know and heal your relationship with abundance, because I've been to your live event, and it was a very, in my experience, just a really kind of grounding experience that felt like I was like coming home. It was like, I'm coming home to my worthiness, and I'm coming home and ready to just continue sharing who I am, the expression of who I am in the world. And it felt so like, I don't know what the word is, but it felt like home. It just felt like, yeah, this, welcome to your birthright, right? So can you share a little bit, like, how did you get to a place? You must have had to heal your own journey with abundance to be able to teach it. How did it show up for you in your life? And why do you love to share it so much with the people that you work with?
Oh, such a beautiful question. It's been quite a journey. And I think our relationship with abundance, like our relationship to anything, is always evolving. So I've certainly healed layers and levels of it, enough so to be able to answer the call that I feel I have on my heart and on my purpose to really illuminate the shadows around abundance for people. To me, it feels like this work is doing me. It's like coming through me. I like wake up every day and just have to illuminate what's been hidden in the dark for so long, which is that abundance is separate from us in some way, which I love what you said. It's like we are abundance. The fullness of life force energy, as long as we're living and breathing, is always available. It's just, are we tuning into that channel or not? And so that was, I think, my own journey. You know, I experienced a very full and abundant life, certainly financially and with, you know, my family growing up, but it felt like to me a lack of like emotional abundance or emotional support. And that was, I think, my biggest healing of how can I feel the support that's around me and release any story or distortion that I have about not being taken care of, not having enough, not having what I need, and then assigning what that means about me if a moment isn't actualizing in the way that I want it to. So if, you know, I'm not receiving love in the way that I want at the moment, you know, does that mean that love's not available or that I'm not worthy of love? Or is there something else going on, you know? And so those were a lot of the challenges and pieces of my journey that I really explored. And then once I graduated college and opened my healing center, I really experienced this very drastic feast and famine type of energy in my practice, in my business. It was like I was either really abundant financially and health-wise and connection-wise and peace-wise, or I was feeling really unabundant in all the ways. Or if I let myself have abundance in one way, like I had money in my bank account that felt really cushy and supportive and safe, then I would withhold health. Like my health would take a decline, or So I started realizing that it was like a story of I can't have it all. I can have abundance here, but not here and here also, which I think is
Yeah.
really common as I support people on their journeys now. It's I can have a little, but can I have it all?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like when you said that, I was like, boom, wow,
Mhm.
yeah. And I have felt that myself,
Yeah.
and just, I consider myself to have a really abundant mindset, a very abundant life. But then there's that part of like the seeking more in something, right? There's always the part of like, and it might be a shadow, it might be a gift. I think our shadows are a gift, which I think is where we're going to go next. But you and you talk about, I love how you use the words illuminating the shadows. And I
Mhm.
want to invite you to share with us what you see the main shadows are around our relationship with abundance.
Sure. Well, first I want to start with just saying, for me, illuminating the shadows just means shining a light on something that's hidden or in the
Mhm.
dark. I think when people hear shadow, they think negative, bad, dark, stay away from. And I love what you just said is that, our gifts are hiding in the dark. They're things that we've tucked away and that are begging for us to illuminate them, to find them, because I think it's those youngest, most tender parts of us that really are in deep connection with the enoughness of everything. Before we experienced any trauma or any just human experiences of the world and then started making stories up about it, we remembered that we were abundance, that we were life force energy emanating through a physical vessel, and we knew that. So if we never reach back into the dark and reconnect with those aspects of ourselves, then we're missing the embodiment, the opportunity to embody those rememberings. I don't think we're learning anything new when it comes to these spiritual perspectives. I think we're remembering the deep
Yeah.
wisdom that lives right in our cells and our bones. It's like, it's all here, no new
Yeah.
information. Like, I don't imagine anybody's going to listen to this and be like, oh, wow, new information. I think there's going to be a familiarity, a
Yeah.
remembering, right?
And I think that the suffering is in the disconnection or the belief, like we've been saying a couple of times already, that we're separate from what we already are. Whether
Right.
and it's not just abundance, it's everything. It's abundance. It's like, I was a health coach for 10 years. It's like you were born resilient and well. Like we were born to live in that too, right? We were born to live in love and abundant. We were born into all of those things. But when we think that we're separate, some might call it like the fall from grace or whatever the word is, like that's where the suffering is.
Oh, completely. And I'm a retired psychotherapist, as you know, and I always had a challenge with diagnosing people, because what I was so attuned to was that there's really only one diagnosis, and that is that we forgot who we are. We
Yeah.
forgot our infinite enoughness. We forgot our birthright for love and peace and joy and pleasure and expansiveness. And though that forgetting manifests in a variety of different symptoms, which then we have labeled in all of these ways. So there's definitely a benefit to seeing those things. But when you understand the separation as a game, it's like, if you can see the separation as like a game that we're playing to understand our fullness, like I'm seeing this piece of the whole in contrast to that, so I can remember my fullness, that becomes a very different game than feeling like we're a victim to
I
something
love
happening.
that. I love that. It's like, ooh, what do I get to, what puzzle piece do I get to like, try to fit in next? I
Yeah,
love that.
that's been
See, you're
really
so
cool.
good. Keri, you have this way of just like this nurturing way of like being really realistic. This is something that Keri does really well. She's loving and nurturing and loves to meditate and super woo. And then she also has like the clarity and the structure of like knowing how to really manifest clearly and get things done. So I love that you just said that. Thank you for that insight. That helped me. It's so true, right? Like, don't be stuck in your story. Just shift your perception around your relationship to the thing that you think is, that you view as being separate. Just shift your perception around, you know, how can I integrate this into my wholeness again? That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I think all these elements, to go back to your question, I want to make sure I speak explicitly to that about what are the shadows of abundance. I think we've already, you know, highlighted a variety of them. You know, one shadow of abundance is the story of not enoughness. I mean, I think that's the most significant one, and it's rampant. It's rampant. Not enough resources, not enough water, money, food,
not enough toilet paper.
Not enough toilet paper.
That one still stumps me. I still don't understand.
Right. So if you think about how wild we got over that as a humanity, it's like we forgot that you can actually like wipe your booty without that. Like,
get a bidet.
Right? There's other options, but we got so fixated. We got on that scarcity that we drove ourselves nuts, and we started like harming one another over it. And we started like hoarding resources from our fellow, you know, humans. And that's the crazy making that we do when we buy into the illusion of scarcity, where we could step back and take a breath and be like, is this actually a problem? Like, what are the resources that I do have? What are the like soul level solutions here that I can activate and really experience our freedom in being able to do that? But when the nervous system clicks in and we don't think we have enough, it takes us to some really painful places and leads us to make some choices that could be harmful both to ourselves and to each other, which I think is why this work is so valuable and so necessary now more than ever.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that the number one shadow that you feel most of us, or many of us, are experience with abundance is not that feeling of not being enough, or there not being enough. What are some of the other shadows that you experience or notice?
I think the second one that's coming up in the energy is the abandonment of our power.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Ooh, I just really felt that one.
I feel like I needed to say it next. Like, it feels very specific to the listeners.
I think I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
That's been coming up a lot lately, actually. Like, yeah. So what's interesting, what I notice is, you know, the behavior that we create, maybe from abandonment, and then maybe not feeling enough, where we think we have to overwork and overdo to get the abundance, where it's really kind of out of alignment. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's this, if we had this abandonment, there's abandonment of power, there's abandonment of whatever, emotional abundance, or, you know, whatever it was in our childhood. But then if there was something that wasn't there, then we just sort of like make up for it, thinking we don't need it. And we create these survivor strategies to make up for what wasn't, because abandonment's painful. It's really, it can be the puzzle piece, right? Like, it can be. So abandoning our power, tell me a little bit more about what's coming through for you on that, because I think what I'm feeling is that it's again, an opportunity to shift our perception in like, where is our true power?
Absolutely. And I think you just named so many elements of it. One I want to make sure I speak to is connection to our desires, right? So if we had an unmet need and we just convinced ourselves that we actually just didn't want that thing, or we don't need it anymore, then we're actually out of connection with our truth and with our desire. And to me, that's what our power is. It's our relationship to our truth in any given moment. And to the truth with like a capital T, right? Because our illusions and our distortions and our stories, they're versions of the truth. They're true to a part of us. They're true in some perspective. But if we really were to zoom out and see the truth with a capital T, like, that's where our power lives. And I think another aspect of the abandonment of our power is only wanting to take credit for things that we create or manifest that we like or that we're happy about. So this
Or that
is
feel good.
feel good.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So we don't want to, it's like if we want to create our experience and we want to wake up to the ways that we're co-creating our reality, we have to be willing to own the things that we don't like, that we attracted and magnetized, just as much as the things that we don't. So maybe we want to say like, wow, I'm so powerful. Like I manifested a great parking spot, or I manifested this wonderful relationship, or this raise at work. But what happens when things like aren't going well? Can you also notice how your vibration could have attracted an illness or an accident or the loss of a job or, a hurtful situation? And we have to be really careful here. And this can be really hard to hear because, we don't want to blame or shame for that. It's not making, we didn't do anything wrong by doing it. We are so powerful that we created that for the value of the experience. And then we can emerge beyond it and do something different and take the lessons and the learning from it. But that's a big conversation. I know there's a lot of perspective on it, but notice what happens to you when you imagine that you are empowered enough and powerful enough to help create your reality.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
For many, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of different perspectives on it. I think some of the things for me, we choose at the soul level before we incarnate. So it's like, yes, we chose it, but we forgot. And it's not very literal in this moment. I mean, there's so many different dimensions to it. But my hope is just to introduce a perspective that may be broader and more supportive than the victim consciousness that we're very steeped in, which is the root of the scarcity consciousness, really.
Yes.
That we're being victimized by the experiences that we're having, versus we are a part of the experiences that we're having. And they're happening for us and with us instead of to us.
Yes. And we are so in that space right now, so in the space of, really just honoring and knowing. I mean, some people are really thriving right now, like my personal family, and I've had to work through, we've had a lot of health opportunities in our family. I've had to work through some things, but really a lot of people are thriving and some people are really feeling the scarcity, and all is welcome. Neither is right or wrong.
Absolutely.
It's always an opportunity to lean in. I like to say, just sort of notice, what is it that wants to be healed within me? In this moment, what is this here to teach me? Is one of the questions I always ask myself. And so I really felt the abandoning your own power piece. I'm going to sit with that after for sure, because when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling that, and it's interesting how whatever our relationship is, and we touched on this, whatever it is, it's like you'll notice that relationship in the different areas of your life. You'll just notice that there are other ways, if you're abandoning your own power, that you're doing it in different areas of your life. And one of them might be just in the receiving of what you're worthy of in finances, in health, in love, and all of the things. So
absolutely, receiving what you desire. And then the next level of that is letting yourself have it. So a lot of times when I spoke to the feast and famine cycle, I can receive it for a minute, but then it doesn't stick around. So that can happen in relationship, that can happen in money, it can happen in health. There's so many different elements of that. So it's like, can I let myself keep what I love? Can I and not in a way of attaching and grasping, let things come and go as they organically, are meant to. And, what's sticking around, and are we okay with that? The phrase that's coming up is, do you know what a big deal you are? Do you let yourself wow, I'm a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm a big deal, and my partner's lucky to have me, and my children are lucky, and I'm lucky to have them. And I'm a big deal in the world. What I have to say matters. And it matters so much that I will take the risk to birth that project or that business or that creation, or to make that post on social media to share a perspective, or I'll write that book, or, I'll say yes to to whatever it is that's calling you. But I think that's another piece of the abandonment of the power, is not wanting to own that, like, we're an important piece of the global puzzle.
Yeah. And everyone is. And everyone is. And that, I think that's a really big one. Yeah. Gosh. Thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. I know in my own personal story, I shared with you in 2019, abundance was my word. And I was able to attract a lot more abundance in my coaching business. And then what I noticed in the very beginning of I was aware of it, but I wasn't able to hold the vibration of the money once it came in. And so I was like immediately looking for a way to invest it in my own, company again. And I'm like, well, I made this much, but I spent this much. And at the end of my taxes for 2019, like there wasn't a whole lot there. And so I can remember there was a program that a previous mentor of mine had offered a next level. And I said, my response was, I'm practicing holding the vibration of money. That was what Spirit said to me. And it, because, so it's kind of like it's almost like the shadow side of almost being too abundant is like, there's so many possibilities in my mind, right? Like I would just say yes to everything, and everything is like, there is a shadow side to that though. I noticed it in myself. And so saying no was actually a gift to myself, and just practicing holding it and being curious about what will I do with these financial resources. Just being curious was so new for me, rather than, looking for something new to invest in, and really just kind of like just being in the stillness and the pause that we're experiencing right now of just, of just being in that vibration. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
You're welcome. Oh yeah, that's huge. No can be just as abundant as our yes. And really being in such connection with our experience of abundance that every moment we're able to hear like the true next inspired action. And sometimes the next inspired action is a no, it is a pause. But if we're so busy and we're not pausing enough to listen and to really relate with, see, to me, abundance is like, it is me, but it's also, it's all of it, right? And so if I can externalize it enough to be in relationship with it, it's like your lover and then the relationship, so there's three entities, right? And so I am talking to my abundance, like thanking it. When I'm mad that it's not enough for what I want, I yell at it. I stay in connection with it. Yeah. And those are some practices that help to deepen this, because I realized too, I have more money in the bank today than I've ever had before. And yet the scarcity visits still from time to time. The story of what if I lose it all, or it's not enough, maybe I should get more, or, whatever the stories are, they're less intense now than they have been, because of the connection of the relationship and the depth of it, but it's still very much here. So the story that more money or more love or more health is going to take away these patterns or these thought processes is an illusion. Or it has been for me anyway.
Yeah, because it's really the feeling or the attachment to the story that creates your own experience, right? So, I want to shift the conversation a little bit more into the timing of where we are. And the reason I want to do that is there's a couple of different things that are coming through for me. One is I'm being guided to bring this up because I was listening to a podcast the other day where it was a spiritual health, and it was actually the Wellness Force. And he was speaking with a venture capitalist who was investing in more, conscious companies. And I just thought, God, it'd be so great if I could just make enough money where I could just invest in all the people who are trying to raise the vibration of the planet and make this a happier place. Because what's happening for me and for many people, or what can happen right now during this global pandemic, is all sorts of stuff is coming up, right? Like, so one of my triggers is around health, which is why I went into health coaching, because I had my own health crisis. And so I noticed myself in this space of like really being aware of is it really true? Is it possible that money is the feeding energy to what determines our rights as human beings, like even just our rights in our own health and well-being? I mean, where we are right now, I mean, I don't even have the words for it really. Like, our entire country has been at a standstill for almost 6 weeks. And so it's almost like, well, what does money even really mean anyway? It like, when you're talking about people have just lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market, or your house went down a couple $100,000, it just becomes numbers, right? And so you and I both agree that money has an energy to it. What are your thoughts on where we are right now and the responsibility that people who are living consciously or on the path to really wanting to create more conscious living in their life, light workers, coaches, healers, which are the majority of the people that you serve, we're all in this space of maybe feeling like we see the bigger picture. And sometimes, I know in my case, I don't feel like I always have the resources to create the change that my mind wants to create at this time. And I feel like we have a responsibility to almost get out of that wound and that story and realize our self-worth so that more of us can collectively come together to create more opportunities for healing for other people. Yeah. For example, I know you have a live event that you do once a year, and I know that that's a big production, and I know that there is an investment that goes into that event so that you can bring hundreds of people together for their own healing experience. Yes. So how, speaking to me and to other people in the community who are aware of this need for change, and we're talking about the need for change in humanity, and the self-responsibility that it is time to take right now for owning our worth in that way. What are your thoughts and feelings on that as we move forward?
Oh, what a big conversation. I love that you brought this up, because I think it is on so many of our hearts, and there's so many layers to what you talked about. I think we're returning to a time of deep sovereignty, and I think we're going to see a huge shift in the way that we use money and relate to money and the economics. I wouldn't call myself an expert in that in any stretch of the imagination. My superpower is in the energetics of these things, but I just want to name that I think that's it. The other piece is we're all here to make a different contribution. So I think it's really important that we remember the power of what we're personally doing to impact the global waters, so to speak. So every piece of healing work that we're personally doing is affecting the ripple of how we're all relating together. So never underestimate the power of your own inner journey, your own inner healing work, and what that's doing to the planet right now. So those of us who've been cultivating practices of meditation, mindfulness, awareness, consciousness, we're the ones who are pretty sturdy and stable right now. And we were called, I'm guessing, I'm sensing, I'm intuiting, to the path that we were called to when we were called to it, so that we were available on the front lines now. Because while the rest of humanity may be really floundering and very wobbly and feeling unsafe because they've attached their sense of safety and security to external things, right? So that's the other trick here that we're coming to, is our security isn't in money. We think it is, and it's a resource that it's made up. Yes, like money is not even real. We made it up. It's part of the game that we're playing here. So yes, we have to interact with it and engage with it, as long as we're co-creating that money is a thing on our planet and that we trade it for stuff. But it's also not responsible for our safety and security. And so any work that we can do to feel safe and secure within and feel the fullness of that life force energy, regardless of the amount of money or resources that we have, is really important. Now, I realize I'm saying that sitting, in a beautiful apartment and having the resources. So I think there's elements of that easier said than done. And for those of us that do have resources and are in a position to offer this level of awareness, and to do our work around safety and security, and then listen for what is the next step for you to contribute. Is it a program that you're to birth? Is it money that you're meant to give to a place that you feel led, that is doing work on this planet, that is supporting the evolution of consciousness and humanity in a way that you resonate with? I know this is a mouthful. There's so much here. How is this landing for you?
Yeah. What I love, what really stuck with me is the words that you said were, and I'll put it in my own words, but it's more like, as long as we're attached to finding safety or security outside of us, we're never really going to feel abundant, which wasn't the words that you said, but that was, what it felt for me. And I think that's just such the golden nugget here, is abundance is within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more we can cultivate practices that help us to touch the truth of that abundance within, the more that as the world changes, we're not falling so far off of our axis that we can't take the actions that we're called to take. Like, we need to be as steady and stable and available right now as possible. And some of us are feeling called to be in deep rest right now. Like, there's going to be waves. Like, this is a long time recovery process that we're in the midst of here. And so I wouldn't shame yourself for wherever you're called to be. I'm working with, hundreds of healers right now across the world, and some are like on the front lines, birthing their new project and program and getting out there and contributing and circulating, resources through the economy. And others are like in deep meditation and contemplation, like not feeling that call yet. And as one group of light workers serves and gets tired and rests and rejuvenates, the next set will come in and to answer the call. So be kind to yourself is what I really want you to know. Because there's also another shadow that we're seeing is like, you have to be serving and we need you and you have to do this. And it's like, yes and no. There are people that are called to the front lines right now in a variety of ways. And there's others who are not yet, or whose work on the front lines may look a little different.
And just the words like you have to, or you should, again, it feels like scarcity again, right? It feels like there isn't anything that we actually have to do. Like, we get to choose. So it's, so it is interesting. And, for me, when this whole thing sort of unfolded, I was flying back from Hawaii actually in mid-March. And I was like, oh yeah, I was born for this. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to come out. Like, in this lifetime, I was in the military. So the warrior started to come out in me. I was like, I'm going to do this. And then 2 weeks later, like, I was like, oh, I'm so tired. And I was like, my word for 2020 is alignment. And I just realized I was out of alignment the first 2 weeks, because I was so ready to serve, but it was from an external place. It wasn't from within. It wasn't. And I was like, my whole life revolves around nurturing myself and my family. So I felt like that was in alignment, but it was more the intention. It was the intention of like, why am I feeling called to do this in this moment? And it was more about the, why am I feeling this need right now? And how is it landing and how is it showing up? And you probably see this all the time, but whenever I overdo it, it's like crickets. Just like, and then all of a sudden,
people away at that point, right?
And then all of a sudden, when I mean, financially, right, or clients or whatever, and then all of a sudden, when I just like relax a little bit into like, whatever, like there's no expectations, all of a sudden I have all these people that are like, I've been following you for 10 years and I know now is the time. And I'm like, oh, that was easy. I didn't even have to like market that.
You
So
became more receptive is what I hear in that, Jen.
that's what it, so yeah.
Yeah, it's the feminine art of receptivity, and the feminine knows how to be magnetic through her being, not her doing,
Yes.
right? The masculine's job isn't to receive, it's to do. And it's to provide. And so it's always, I think, a dance that we're doing between finding what those sweet spots are in your energy for receiving. And it sounds like you found it.
Thank you. And thank you for seeing that in me, because it's something that I noticed that you embody very, very naturally and very well. It's that feminine essence of receiving. And it shows through when you're on the stage. Like, you have the ability to hold this vast space for healers. So for listeners, like, holding the space for healers and coaches is it feels for me a little bit of a deeper space to hold for other people, because they're holding the space for the people that they support, right? So then we've got like Mother Keri coming in and holding that deep space. And really, I think that was one of the things that really resonated with me when I was at the Healer's Code, is like, abundance is a lot about the receiving. And if we set a goal, if we put a number to something, I noticed this too, it could be limiting, right? Whereas if we just open up the hands to receive whatever it is that comes our way, we might blow our goal away. And you do this so beautifully. And as we wrap up, I want to just invite you to share with me a little bit about the value of receiving, and how that opens up a more abundant life for us.
Yeah, receiving can feel so vulnerable, because oftentimes we've been given things without our conscious consent. So this is some wounding that can happen in the sacral chakra that is responsible for our worthiness, our creation, our birthing, and our receiving. So there's often some things to clean up there before we, or just a willingness to receive through, beyond, and around that energy, Yeah. So, and receiving feels passive, but I want to invite you to know that receiving and the art of surrendering to receive is a very active and intentional process. It's not passive. It's not giving up. It's not a limp position. It's actually a deeply sacred and holy feminine essenced position to hold and to embody, which, when I say feminine, that's just an energy that both male and female identified humans have within themselves. So that is, I feel really passionate about that, the receiving piece, because I think sometimes we're blocking receiving without even knowing why. It's like, do I feel safe to receive? What do I feel like I have to give up in exchange for what I get? And any of those kind of ideas or beliefs can start to show us where we have a bit of armor around receiving or around opening. Yeah,
and I'm really just noticing that it's like there's this intimacy, right, in the connection with the people, the work, the energetic space, like all of it that is the vulnerable part in receiving. I mean, intimacy with partners is vulnerable. And so intimacy in, just being willing to allow yourself to just be like filled up, like literally just filled up by allowing yourself to receive something that actually, though it is outside of you, but it is still a part of you. So, we talked about we're not separate from it. We're not seeking it externally. And I think that there's a really healing energy around just like setting the intention and opening up the space, but then actively surrendering without attachment.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
that's a sweet spot, to strike, because there's
Yeah.
so much duality in that and so much polarity. I mean, and I think that's the game, that when we understand that we're playing, it's really just opening up to receive more of who and what we actually are. It's not receiving something foreign, but when we have the story that we are not abundance, we are not this, we are not that, we forget the truth of the interconnectedness, then we feel like something foreign is, is penetrating us,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
accessing us. And so I think that's some of the healing that is available for happening just by hearing, the transmission of this conversation today. It was like you were drawn here for a good reason. And
Yeah. And, I'm just on a personal note, I'm just going to be super transparent. When I was working through my abundance blocks, there was a huge correlation in my relationship. Now I've been married almost 17 years. I've been with my husband for 20. So I was noticing this exchange of energy that was reflecting in my ability to receive love and intimacy from my husband, that was showing up in my ability to receive when I decided to, raise my rates and really charge my worth and go from hourly to package pricing. Like, I was just very much aware of the whole sacral chakra and some wounding around that area that was showing up not only in my relationship with money, but my relationship with just the intimacy with my husband. And it was just I consider myself to be very self-aware. And I just remember being like, well, that's really interesting. Like, it's just all about opening up to receive and just allowing my worthiness to be fulfilled. Like, that's all I have to do. Okay.
I love that you
Yeah.
shared that. It's so intimately connected. And I think if we're avoiding the conversation of like money, sex, love, like all of it is intertwined. So
Mm-hmm.
blocking money also blocks pleasure, and it blocks
Yeah.
love, and blocking love or pleasure also blocks the capacity for financial abundance. So there's a deep relationship between receiving as a whole. And it's like, we don't get to be like, oh, okay, I want this, but not that. Like, kind of. I mean, we can set boundaries, certainly, and be, what we're available for and not. But so often this is playing out unconsciously, that to get our attention, it has to kind of shut down a significant amount of the receiving so that we notice it enough and
Mm.
become uncomfortable enough to get curious and to inquire about, how much more we're capable of receiving and having.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, it's been so wonderful having you on here today, Keri.
Thank you.
I want to invite the listeners to consider attending your Healers Code Live event in San Diego. Not only San Diego, a beautiful place to visit, but to be in the room with other conscious healers and coaches and in the presence of Keri is truly, truly a wonderful gift. So you can just, if you're watching the video, you can just see her essence right now. She's just so beautiful and authentic and grounded. And it's been a pleasure to share you with my community. So thank you for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you. I received that.
Yeah, I want to invite you to share, because I know that you have a challenge, or you call it an abundance challenge or manifestation. I'm not sure what it is, with the listeners. And also you have a couple of other things going on too. I know that you have an event tomorrow, but I don't know that this won't go out until next week. But if there's any other events that you're hosting, to please share and let people know where they can find you.
Absolutely. So a couple things. If anyone's interested in coming to Healers Code Live in San Diego, you can visit healerscodelive.com. We've got an interest list building there, and we'll let you know as soon as that's all all ready to go. I'm so excited because after we've all been quarantined, we're going to be so excited to grab each other and hug and reconnect. And that won't be until early 2021. So as far as the Abundance Activation Challenge, that is, it's totally free. It's on my website. It's my 6-step abundance upgrade process. So I walk you through a series of exercises to help you to illuminate your shadows and deeply connect with your desires. And it's a process of manifestation that I've personally used that goes beyond the traditionally known like ask, believe, receive kind of stuff. It really deepens into the healing elements that loosens things up and allows us to receive more fully and completely. And during the pandemic that's going on, I am holding space for healers for free during a couple times a month healers gatherings online. So anyone can visit theawakenedhealer.com and see what's coming up next as far as that goes, and come play with us there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for just holding that space for healers to come together. I'm so grateful. Yes. And thank you for being here. Thank you for just being a beacon of light in the world and sharing your gifts. And
you're welcome.
I'm super grateful.
Thanks for the show and for just illuminating so many messages for us all year round.
Oh, thank you. I'm receiving that.
All the love.
Yes. All right, sister. Well, I love you, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll connect soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.